Hey folks, so I'm here for another episode of Archetype Awakenings, which are like transmissions and stories exploring sort of the inner world, the spiritual realms. And today I have a special guest. I love having these conversations. And I'm going to invite him on. So welcome, Matt. How are you doing?
Hello, hello. Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm doing very well. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm really good. Okay, so Matt is a really good friend that actually I met at a networking event recently, and we just gelled and just hit it off talking about consciousness and all the spiritual juiciness. So I thought it'd be really fun to just dive in and, from our conversation the other day, talking about like what I would call shadow integration, and that you were saying it's called like parts work, parts
Mm,
integration. Because I feel there's so much in the spiritual world about like you're broken, you have to fix yourself, like trying to resolve something. Whereas what I'm learning is actually just accepting these parts and giving space for them to be seen and heard,
yeah.
right? And that's where we take our power back in that light dark realm. So actually, where would be good to start is to share a little bit more about what you do, Matt, because I know you work with IFS. So just to
Yeah.
explain to everyone what your work is about.
Thank you. Well, yeah, so I guess in a nutshell, I'm a transformational coach, and I'm trained in internal family systems as well, which is it's a therapeutic model, but it's been adapted for the coaching realm as well. So I can explain a bit later in terms of how that differs. But yeah, the underlying aspect is around parts work that you were then discussing and saying, okay, it sounds very similar in terms of the shadow work and things that you do. Um, and it's nice actually what you just said as well about the world of kind of personal development, or it's often that trying to fix ourselves or trying to make ourselves whole. And I think that's where I differ a lot on the coaching front, where we both do, in that I come at it as nobody's broken, nobody has anything missing. We are whole, we are complete. And it's more around that self acceptance, more around that awareness. And I think the parts work and the terminology, the language, the approach actually creates a really nice kind of structure for us to be able to do that. So, yeah, I think that'd be really nice for us to discuss today.
So juicy. I literally love this work. Because also, when I say, yeah, I think people don't also like the word shadow. It seems quite like
Mm,
intense. But, I love the work of Jung and a lot of people, that
mm,
psychological realm. But actually, really, how I relate to it with the work I do with astrology, we're working with archetypes and symbols, and those archetypes represent different parts of us,
mm,
which is different approach from what you do, but it's all connected.
yeah.
And I think the more we give love and acceptance to those parts, the more we can kind of come back to ourselves.
Mm,
And I think it's really about like the deeper we go into the parts and the shadows, the brighter our light can be. We need both.
yeah,
Um, so,
definitely. I think it's that.
mm,
And the shadows, I when I first was learning about shadow work as well, I did it sounds almost, the evil, the shadow, but actually I understand it now. It's just the hidden, right? So we shine the light of consciousness into the shadow, and then we go, oh, what's here? All these bits that were hiding in the dark, but fundamentally, I don't think any of them are there to try and hurt us. And that's the fundamental principle of parts work, is that there is no bad part. They're all there with good intentions. Just over the years, from our experiences, our traumas, things we go through, the way that these parts sometimes begin to behave actually is doing more damage than good, but it's not the intention to do the damage.
thanks for clarifying that. So can you explain a bit more about like how that, I'm going to get it wrong, aren't I? Internal family systems, how that
Absolutely.
works, and like maybe some examples of maybe how that's helped you in your journey.
Mm. Definitely. So, yeah, I'll give kind of a brief overview. So, internal family systems has the idea that we are all made up of parts. So whether it can be, anytime we use it in our normal language, you'd be like, oh, there's this part of me that just procrastinates all the time. So that's your procrastinator part. Or there's this part of me that has to do everything perfectly, and that's your perfectionist part. Or part of me that is quick to anger. It's your anger part. So you can use it in the terminology very freely in that way. But alongside our parts, we have something called the true self. And this is what I really like, because most therapeutic models say, to be compassionate, you have to have experienced compassion to learn that behavior and therefore display it. Whereas IFS and Dick Schwartz, who's the founder of it, has this spiritual underpinning of your true self is innately compassionate, it's innately whole, it's innately loving, and it has these kind of 8 C's of self leadership, which is, I'm trying to remember them now, but compassion, courage, clarity, curiosity. Um, on the spot now, I've lost a few, but you get the idea of it's that kind of innate wholeness that I was just discussing there that we all have. We don't have to learn any of those qualities, they are with us in our true self. And the idea with IFS is that so I would encourage my client to start to be aware of these parts. So if we were looking at a perfectionist part, we want to see, where is it in the body? Where does it come up? What does it look like? What does it feel like? What's the texture? What's the emotions that it rises with it? And it's that kind of reflection to these parts, but then to get into conversation. So if I'm speaking to a client and I ask them, what do you feel towards this perfectionist part? And they go, oh, well, it just makes me really angry. Then I know, okay, well, hang on, that's another part coming up. This is anger, because that's not your true self. But if they say, oh, do you know what? I just feel sorry for her. I'm really curious. I just want to give it a hug. Okay, we're getting into our true self. And that's when we can start to communicate with these parts from a place of self, as they call it. And you'll be amazed, because we're then separating ourselves from our emotions, from our parts. We're disidentifying with this. And a lot of people, they do, we spend our entire life caught up in our emotions, caught up in our parts, and we think that's who we are. We don't know we have this true self, and that's the true essence of being. So when we can separate, when we can start to have a conversation with the part as though it's another person, it's incredible what can flow, and what comes out. And so in terms of our parts, they're all called protector parts because, again, they're inherently good and they're here to protect us. And there's 2 main parts. I'll go into a little bit of detail, but there's the managers, which are parts that are proactively trying to prevent us from getting into bad situations and feeling pain. And there's firefighters, which are parts which erupt in certain situations. There's that behavioral instinct there. And they tend to be trying to protect us from what are called exiles. And the exiles are known as basically the parts which have received the trauma in time. So, yeah, for myself, I've done some IFS on myself, and I often do it now because it's so easy and very much around feeling attractive or not. I went in deep to this anxiety feeling part and spoke to it and explored it, and that took me to this memory of childhood of when, I won't go into memory, but in terms of I'd felt very unattractive, somebody being like, oh, why would you go out with Matt, kind of thing. And it was just like, oh, hang on, this clicks. There was that exile. This anxious part has become very strong, overbearing for when I get into new relationships to make myself feel attractive because it's trying to avoid that pain again. But as soon as I could identify that, shine a light of consciousness on it, talk to that exile and be like, I'm not a child anymore. I'm okay. I am attractive. I accept myself. The anxiety just fades away. I haven't had it since. And it's quite incredible. So, that in a nutshell, there's a lot of information there, but hopefully you can see there's that parts, the self, and how it all interrelates, and it's getting into conversation with them. How's that?
Mm, I love that. Yeah, thanks for explaining that and illustrating it, 'cause that's always helpful. Like, I love it as you're speaking. I'm like, I love that you're talking about this curiosity piece because I think,
Mm,
and I feel that side of toxic positivity in the spiritual world, which at least I got into, and I think we've alluded to, is like that we need fixing. And it's like, no, we're innately compassionate. We have this childlike wonder, which are all the qualities you spoke to, which I love. And actually, if we're curious, we don't kind of berate ourselves for these parts because they're all part of us.
Mm,
And actually, those protectors that you're speaking, they're just what I see them as. It's just a coping mechanism. Anything, perfectionism, procrastination, like I really noticed that in myself. They're just protecting me from, like you said, some trauma that happened because I don't, my subconscious is like, oh, we can't go there again. So that pattern plays out as a protection, like you say. And actually I was digging into this recently and actually I can relate to what you shared about this attractiveness.
mm,
I actually remember a memory came up I don't know, a few months ago, and it was like I remember the first boy I fancied when I must have been like 5 or something. And I literally no, I've worn glasses since I was like 5. And I just remember somebody, kids just say it like it is when you're that age,
yeah.
which is kind of good. But I remember saying something like somebody said, "Oh, Hannah fancies you." And he was just like, "Oh," like this kind of reaction of this
Mm,
being disgusted at that
mm,
age. And I'm like, wow, like I've literally internalized that I can't put myself out there to the
mm,
point when I remember as a teenager, my mum would say, "Oh, that guy likes you, or he's giving you attention." And I was like, "No, no," like I was so
mm,
closed off to it because again, I was protecting myself from this part that was wounded when I was 5, and I'm like, I don't want to see that because it's too
mm.
vulnerable and painful. So there's always like these experiences that are playing out, like you say.
Yeah, it's
And
amazing, isn't it?
it
Just
is.
what sits dormant,
Yeah.
affecting our behavior, but we have no idea.
Exactly. And actually, I've dug into, and I would love to dig into perfectionism because I feel like
Mm,
it's such a big, like something that a lot of people have, or we all have it,
mm,
of course, but particularly people in my world have it strong, and
mm,
I do. And what I was discovering recently, and I think I spoke to you for coffee the other day, it's like I've had so many jobs in my life, right? I'm very open about it. Like over 25, which seems crazy that I'm 34 and I've had that many jobs. But what I realized when I dug deeper, I've reflected this over the years and thought, why can't I get my shit together and stay in, build a career and blah, blah, blah. And there's so many layers to it, of course. But I used to feel so much shame around that I hadn't just built a career like a lot of people that I knew had. And when I dug under, it was actually because I was searching for this deeper meaning, and none of
mm,
those jobs fulfilled it. But recently, actually, yesterday it surfaced. I was like, oh, there's another layer here that actually a part of me has been seeking and looking for the perfect job, which
right,
doesn't exist.
mm,
So my perfectionism, I can see really clearly now, actually, it must have been this eclipse that's illuminated it. This perfectionist part of me is like picking holes in things. Oh, it's not quite right. The people aren't there. The environment is draining me, which actually I now think, am I seeing that for truth? Am I
mm,
seeing it for what it is? Or am I seeing it through this perfectionist lens that's obviously just picking everything apart?
mm.
So that was like a real eye opener for me yesterday. I was like, oh wow, there's another layer of this right here, right now.
Yeah, no, and that's amazing, and that's that kind of introspection many people don't do, right? It takes time. You're a professional yourself, and you're still uncovering layers. Um, but yeah, I mean, what do you think that perfectionist part would want to tell you, if that's safe to say?
Yeah, well, I feel like, and I feel there's another piece there when I actually dug in, is it's I think underneath that perfectionist is actually avoiding intimacy.
No, okay.
Because if I had stayed in, for example, the pattern is I've not stayed in a job for longer than 18 months. So
Mm,
it's almost like if I'd stayed in something for longer, then I would have grown and
mm,
maybe like, progressed in whatever it was.
mm,
And I was like, oh, actually, there's another piece here, a piece of
mm.
like a fear of intimacy, fear
Interesting.
of growth.
Okay.
And I think it just wants to be it just wants to be loved. It just
Mm.
wants to kind of be seen in maybe the fear of intimacy. I'm not sure. That's what's surfacing as I'm speaking. Um,
It's fascinating, and that's where I'd encourage, if we were in a session, I won't go down certain avenues, but getting you into your true self there to give that part that love and that compassion, to let it
mm,
know it's okay to grow now and to actually have that conversation. I think it'd be fascinating what comes up. Maybe that's something we
mm.
can do as well. And there's something called parts mapping, which is really nice. And
Okay.
that's where, yeah, we can start to see how these parts interrelate. Because you're talking
Mm,
about perfectionist part, but I also noticed there's a kind of almost a fear of commitment part there as well. And
mm,
there can be lots of different layers, and to draw them out and actually go, right, what goes where, what looks like what, can start to help you to map and make sense of these parts. And to is there a core exile, something that happened years ago? Did somebody say, oh no, don't get a career because then you're just like everyone else? Who knows? Maybe there's that kind of memory deep down or something. But
I love this. I'm having a therapy session at the same time. Yeah, because that's I love it. I feel it very much connects with the work I do with astrology
mm,
because when then, you study somebody's chart
mm,
and myself, obviously, I'm always looking at my chart. These parts are in our chart, like you say, the moon, your emotional self, your sun sign is the way you are in the world.
mm,
And if these parts aren't receiving what they need intimately, then they act out and they're triggered by situations.
yeah,
Um, and so I just want to dig deep into this perfectionism thing because I'm curious to know like your thoughts or what you've seen in that part perfectionism. Like, have you explored it yourself, and what have you found
yeah.
in that for you?
I mean, it's a very common part, isn't it? It's very, and we all have a part which wants to do a good job. That's your perfectionist part. But for some reason, it's incredibly powerful in many people nowadays. And I think for me and for others and people I've worked with, it's very much a societal thing. We are a society that raises kids to pass exams, to be measured, to be quantified, to be scored and tested all the time, and all of that relies on doing the best you can. And if you can't do the best, but in this box that we've created, because there's so many other ways to excel, then this perfectionist part gets stronger because when you do well, you get the praise, you get the adulation, you get these good things. So I think, yeah, the perfectionism largely, I'm sure a lot of us back in school days, there'll be some sort of time when a parent, has given us praise because we've done well, or if we haven't done well, then, we've felt bad or we've been made to feel like we're not good enough. And so therefore, right, I need to do everything to the best it can be done so I can be whole again. I can be the best person or the best version of myself. But when we grow up, we become adults, we know that's not actually true. You know, an exam, the grades I got in school were great, but I would have happily got all C's and actually I'd be probably nowhere different in life kind of thing. It felt like the be all and end all at the time, but it's not. It's just something we've created to measure in a certain way. Um, so yeah, perfectionism is bred from our society, is bred from our culture of constantly measuring ourselves. Um, and it's good to want to achieve, and I think it's good to measure in a way, but we don't all fit into the same hierarchy. Some people are naturally gifted at exams, some people aren't. They're going to be better at other
Mm.
things, but we don't have that comparison. Um, so yeah, I think does that kind of make sense in terms of why perfectionism is so strong?
Yeah, it does. I totally hear where you're coming from. It's a societal thing of like we're measured by our results at school and everything. And I think anyway, I could go on about that all day because to me, I think that system is just it's just a memory test, you know? And actually, if you're not academic, which I wasn't particularly very creative, really good at like art, English,
Mm,
struggle with math, struggle with science. Like I had to have extra maths lessons
Mm.
because I didn't like my teacher, so that made it worse. And I used to just get so frustrated with it, and I went round
Mm.
in circles. And I just remember thinking, like, what is the point of this?
Mm.
Right. And in the end, because I had these extra like lessons, I did get a B, and I was like kind of shocked that I
Mm.
got that. But actually, it's always quite, I always like laugh at this because actually, you know, well, as I said, I've had so many jobs that
Mm.
don't really even look at your qualifications. But what makes me laugh is actually like I'm practicing astrology and it's actually quite mathematical. You
Mm.
know, the aspects you're reading in somebody's chart, you're working out, and I'm like, oh, this is quite funny. Like that belief of me saying I couldn't do maths, I actually can, but it was so deeply ingrained because I didn't enjoy it and I didn't gel
Mm.
with the teacher that I've internalized that so deeply, and I had to unpick so many layers around that for me.
Mm. I
So
bet. And it's amazing, isn't it? The practical side of, imagine if they had been teaching you astrology and things in school through
yeah,
math and stuff, we probably would have been like, oh, let me do more of this kind of thing. So yeah, it's the different ways of learning. And as you mentioned that as well, I was thinking because sometimes perfectionism can be almost an excuse in a way or a blocker. It's a great way to never put yourself out there and therefore to never try and therefore to never fail just because you think, well, hang on, I won't release this coaching program or I won't retrain because I'm just not quite ready. I need to do it perfectly. Whereas,
I love that example. And I think a lot of people can relate to that because I definitely can,
yeah.
right? And that plays in what I feel, that plays into the inner critic because the
Mm.
inner critic, has high standards of what it's got to be like, how it's got to
Mm.
be, how it's got to come into fruition. And we all know that the creative process is not a linear thing. It's you follow the next thread, the next thread, the next step appears because you don't just get to the top of the mountain overnight. Like that's a
Mm.
process. And I can definitely hold my hands up high and say it's only really this year that I'm probably taking like full responsibility for that part of me where I've gotten out of things because
Mm.
I've said, oh, I'm not ready or it's not quite ready. But actually, for anyone listening, if you're really stuck in that loop, it's like, okay, what's the messy action I can take? It's not about taking perfect action, people. It's just keep taking the actions. And that's how you build momentum towards whatever you're creating, right?
Definitely. Action, action, action. It's just, yeah, can't say it enough. Do anything. Just the worst thing you can do is nothing. So just
Yeah.
do something, do it wrong, mess it up, learn from it,
Yeah.
something else. That's always the steps. And you build confidence as you just try things. You just something
Mm.
that's new. You never know what's going to come up.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're never going to get anywhere if you just stay where you are. So
So I'd love to hear, do you have an example of how your perfectionist self has that part of you has kind of played out in your life or in your business? Because that's an interesting one to dig into.
yeah, I think similar to what we mentioned, and definitely that kind of fear of, well, if I put myself out there and what if nobody gives me anything back? What if I fail? I think that's more where it comes in. For me, I like to do things well, and coming from an engineering world as well, and that kind of corporate lifestyle, there's a lot of people who almost wear perfectionism as a badge. Like,
Mm.
yeah, look at me, I do everything perfectly, and therefore I'm the best. And I used to just not quite feel good enough, but it was also because I just wasn't interested. I'd gone into a world that actually didn't fulfill me in that kind of way and left me quite empty and broken. And it was only through coaching and finding my spiritual side, I say not finding, but just letting it out because I'd buried it away for so long, um, that I could start to finally be my true self. But the perfectionism, it's always there, but it's much more tamed, and I'd say it's more my inner critic is what I have to almost not fight because that's not from my true self if I was to say fighting it. But I have to be curious and be like, okay, what's coming up? Why have I've got this really important to do item on my to do list, but it's been there for 2 weeks. Why have I not done it? What am I
Mm.
scared of? If I did that now, what's the worst that could happen? And often things come up, and it might be a case of, okay, maybe that's not the best thing to do now. I'll do this instead. But at least then I know why, and I'm not kidding myself, and I'm not just living subconsciously again. I'm consciously choosing to not do that because of X. I'll come to it when I've done Y.
Mm.
So yeah, that's for me. It's the inner critic is strong.
Mm. And from what you shared, I feel like there's a piece definitely connected with, I guess, that underlayer of perfectionism is like putting off those tasks, like you said.
Mm.
Feeds into procrastination. To
Mm.
me, they're interlinked
Yeah.
because you then procrastinate important tasks. Like I know I had a task on my list from a few years ago. It's like contact some yoga studios to put like this monthly cacao circle that I run at home, like put it out into these yoga spaces. And I'm like, why do I keep procrastinating? And I finally did it yesterday, but I was like, there's this underneath that. There's like a fear of like rejection. What if they
Mm.
don't want, what if they don't want to have me in their studio?
Mhm.
There's a part of me that didn't want to feel that rejection.
Yeah.
And actually I was okay. I realized, and I think this is well, the part of the work I teach is like actually literally what is the worst case scenario, because it's always not that bad. It's
Mm.
always in your subconscious. And when you really see, okay, they don't reply to me, they don't want me the circle in their place, well, that's okay. It's actually all happening for me. Everything is always happening for you. And that's something I'm really adopting this year in a container I'm in. But I feel there is that piece of rejection underneath
Mm.
that, you know, and some part of us, like the wounded part of us, doesn't want to feel that abandonment, rejection, because it feels, again, there's a piece of like not feeling good enough. If
Mm.
I'm rejected, then it enhances, oh, I'm not worthy of the thing I want. When
Mm.
actually, like you were mentioning earlier, you come into this world like innately compassionate, curious. Your true self is enough, whatever happens. It doesn't matter about the external results and validation. It's like about self-validation first,
Mm.
and then actually just allowing the perfectionist part to be there.
Yeah.
And that brings me on to something I'd love to delve into because I feel these parts, shadow parts, whatever you want to call them, they also have medicine. It's not just like, oh, I'm not going to look at that perfectionist part. It's like, well, actually, what's the medicine of that? So I'd love
Mm.
to hear your thoughts on what you feel is the medicine, the wisdom of that perfectionist part.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean the parts in general, and that's another kind of reason. Well, there's lots of in the studies I'm doing, there's lots of approaches to parts work. So the internal family systems is one methodology, but parts work in general, there's lots of coaches, therapists who have their own versions of parts work and kind of come at it from a different angle. And some might say, yes, you want to look at it and completely dissolve that part. I don't believe that in terms of I would never try to get rid of a part. Again, they're all innately there. It's useful. The perfectionist part is useful, but not when it's overpowering all the other parts, kind of thing.
Mm.
So the medicine for us is that consciousness and is that curiosity. It's befriending it. It's a similar with our thoughts and our mind, right? The what we teach people in terms of if you're going to resist your thoughts, you're just going to get stronger and then you just think about that thing more. As soon as you actually realize you can choose what thought to give power to, all of a sudden it starts to relax and then give space for thoughts that you might want to focus on and give power to. And it's similar with parts. It's that kind of if you're there going, oh, I hate this, why are you here? You just make it stronger. And it's not coming from that place of self. So the medicine is to be able to separate yourself, to have the conversation and to let it know that it's okay. You don't have to protect me anymore. And often these parts, some coaches say these parts have their own nervous system, they have their own personality, they have their own culture themselves. So it can be really deep in that way. Um, so yeah, medicine, the tonic is really kind of that empathy and consciousness and yeah, shining that light on it, but with love.
I love that. Mm, that being witnessed, as you say.
Definitely.
And that's
What about
definitely
what
something I
about for yourself though? Yeah, is the
yeah.
medicine, when you say medicine, what do you think?
Well, when I think of medicine, I feel it's like the wisdom that comes from that part, I guess. It's
Mm,
like, you know, looking at the opposite of that. So I guess the perfectionism, I always feel like these parts that you said, they have a consciousness and their own energy.
mm,
And it makes me think of, in astrology, I work with the 12 energies. Somebody has the 12 energies in their birth chart. And the perfectionist definitely makes me think of Virgo, which is an earth energy, which is the shadow side of that energy. She's like a fertile goddess and planting seeds in the earth, that sort of creation. But then there's that side of nitpicking and being really critical and having really high expectations. So I feel like and there's an anxiousness to that, I would say, to
mm,
perfectionism. There's
mm,
like an anxiety underneath that, I mean, that's been my experience.
mm,
So I would say that the sort of medicine is the opposite of actually relaxing and feeling in this place of softness and surrender.
mm,
That's actually going to help the perfectionist. That's my interpretation of it. Like that's the medicine is to soothe and to be into the body because that perfectionism is very much, it feels like it's lodged in the head and it's
mm,
like over analyzing and like it's quite controlling. It wants to control how things are going to happen. Whereas if it can take a step back and surrender, the medicine is in that, like
mm,
really calming the nervous system down.
mm,
And that's what I always say to people with anxiety. They say, I want to get rid of my anxiety. It's like, no, you don't just get rid of it. It's
mm,
there. You meet it, you love
mm,
on it, and it will shift and it will stop having power over you. It's still going to be there,
mm,
but you also have to thank it for being there,
mm,
right? Because there's a part of you that it's surfacing for a reason, for protection. So it's actually there as like a loving wisdom in a funny sort of way. That's how I see it. Um, but there's so many intricate layers underneath that. And yeah, we could talk for hours about that. But yeah, I feel that's the relaxation
mm.
that sort of helps that perfectionist part.
Definitely. Yeah, that's a huge correlation to that from being in self. You're not hitting on it, you're accepting it. You're going, okay, let's relax together now. You don't have to be so strong. Um, and yeah, you're not there to get rid of it. You're almost there to find the balance. It sounds more, if you're looking at the opposite, it's kind of that's to meet in the middle. Um, so yeah, and that's I think like we've discussed as well, is that it, there's so many different methodologies, so many different ways of dealing, so many different terminologies as well. But actually, the core fundamental aspect of acceptance is there, of that self acceptance. No one else can give you that acceptance. You have to do that yourself. We as coaches can hold our clients' hands and help them to do that and to realize how. But yeah, so many people have that almost, they're constantly battling themselves all their
Mm.
life, like stop it, get rid of that anxiety. That anxiety is bad. And that's never got anyone anywhere. It just makes it stronger, it just gives you more anxiety. But when you actually look into it, you give it the medicine it needs, you accept it as part of who you are, it's just dissolves away. So yeah,
Mm, mm. So
that's
powerful, isn't it? So lastly, because I'm conscious of time, but just as a juicy question,
mm,
what would you say is a part of you that because I feel like when I look at my chart, there's parts of me that I'm like, oh, I really like this part of me, and there's parts of me I'm more resistant to.
mm,
What would you just what's surfacing now? Like as I say this, like what part of you do you feel quite resistant to, or you've had to kind of battle with? I'd love to know.
for me, it's the imposter syndrome part. Definitely, I think, and that's I think a common one as well. Definitely that. Who am I to be telling people my journey? What makes me special? It's that little voice going, yeah, how can you be who you are? Um, and that was also very strong, and that was something that held me back, just even in my work previously as a project manager. engineering, it took me many years just to quit one job and even apply for others because I always thought, well, I won't get it. But lo and behold, you try and you do, and step by step, that imposter, the evidence for our imposter part is normally the opposite. When we get comfortable and
Mm.
we go, what's the evidence here? What actually has happened? It normally shows that you can do what you think you can do, and you do have the knowledge and the capability. So yeah, for me, the imposter syndrome is a part that I constantly visit. I'm constantly saying hello, what you doing, back again, have a chat, um, and then we move forward, and we've got a good relationship now. So yeah,
Mm.
that's
I
nice.
love that.
What about
It's like having a relationship with it, isn't it? And going, yep, you're here for the ride, so we're not going to
yeah,
ignore you.
yeah,
We're going to
yeah,
just
yeah.
be here.
Yeah. What about yourself though? Is there, besides the perfectionist part, is it?
Yeah, but the perfectionist is quite strong, but I
Mm,
feel like I've come into harmony with that part now. Um, I feel still, I always know there's layers to this, is there's like a part of me that is, well, it probably is the part of me that wants to feel angry. And
mm,
that manifests as frustration for me. And I know that like I'm going into my ego when I'm just feeling really frustrated about something and kind of in the drama of something.
mm,
That's actually quite easy. Like, what was it last week? I had some tech things going on, and like Paul, my partner's like quite techie, so I'm always like, "Oh, can you help me with this?"
mm,
And I could feel it. It was just like this energy moving up. I was like, from my, stomach, this like raw frustration.
mm,
And I notice there's always like I almost go into like judging myself that this
mm,
frustration is surfacing. So for me, that's always like an edge that I have to meet of like, oh, the frustration's here. Like, okay, the medicine is in like meeting it
mm,
and actually softening. And I think underneath that is there's an impatience, because I'm quite fiery. And so I just like want it done like yesterday. So
yeah,
I know that that's and it's a lesson in patience.
mm,
But ultimately, then there's these other parts of me, like the earth and fire in my chart, that is very patient and is like in it for the long haul, willing to climb up the mountain no matter what the obstacles. And this fiery part of me is like, just it's got to happen right now, like
mm,
yesterday. So I'm always aware of these parts of me. And that's why I love astrology, because you can see kind of the elements, the
mm,
core elements, we all have all 12, sorry, all four elements, but which elements are stronger and how they kind of play out, what the dynamics are between them. So it's a fascinating world. And yeah, it always helps me to navigate that, you know. So.
yeah. And I just love how it all crosses over perfectly, isn't it? But it's becoming aware, whether it's through the models and the terminology you use, or for me, or for others, it's all basically going, oh, I've got this fire part, I've got this earth part. Now I know these things. Actually, I can then do something about it because we have emotional intelligence. So, we're not stuck just as we are, but we have to figure out who we are first before we can then take actions to sort of make changes. But yeah,
Mm,
it's amazing.
yes. So just to wrap up, because I mean, I'd love to talk for hours about this, but like if you could give something like really profound or something
No
like, I know it's a whole system you work with, but like even like, because I know we're not about quick fixes and I'm
problem.
definitely not. But if you could give some words of wisdom or like something that's really helped you shift and go, okay, it's about loving and accepting these parts. Like if somebody's like, I want to delve more into this world, like what would you say to them?
Well, I mean, speak to me, but obviously it is getting into that place of compassion. It's being aware, if you're angry at yourself, you're never going to fix anything. So it's firstly just getting curious. I think that's easier than compassion, is just to be curious. So when you have a part that's coming up, you have a feeling and emotion, step aside and just ask why. Why are you here? What do you want? But just do it in a loving way. And that's it. Just start there. Don't do any more. Every time that emotion comes up, just do that and just see what comes back. Um, And yeah, I think people would be amazed because it sounds too simple. It sounds a bit woo-woo, but actually it's self-love and we do need that. And that's the first place to start, I think.
Thank you. I love that simplicity. Yeah, it doesn't need to be complicated.
Really
And I
isn't
think
it? It's deceptively simple. I think
that
a lot
it's
of
it's a
people.
powerful practice because
Yeah.
I do something similar, and that's
Mm,
what I would share is like, yeah, meeting it, being aware
mm,
of it, because then you sort of break the unconscious behavior that it wants to go into. If you just meet it and it has wisdom, or you journal on it as well, feel it, and then you can journal on it. Depends how deep you're going with it. But I always find that's really helpful to then understand the deeper layer of where it's coming
mm.
from,
So, yeah.
you know. So, yeah. Thank you, Matt. This was juicy.
Thank
Loved,
you. I've
loved
enjoyed that.
talking about this, and I know it's going to be really eye-opening for people.
Mm,
So, yeah, I'll drop obviously Matt's details as well below this video so you can connect with him, see all the wonderful things he's doing. And like honestly love your courage and your, integrity because I remember when we first met at
mm.
this networking, I think we were all coming out and everyone was leaving and you were just like, like astrology, wow, that's cool. And we just hit it off.
Yeah.
And I would love like how you talk, you really are an example of walking your talk. So thank you for being that human in the world of walking the talk and being in integrity with your values and what you believe in.
Well, likewise, I think that's why when we first met, I was like, oh, somebody different, somebody who's actually thinking a bit outside of the box with an emotional head. Um, yeah, and so likewise back to you, I think, and it's important that people like us, everybody's got the same within them, but I think we're fortunate enough that we've kind of tapped into it a bit younger in life as well, so we can definitely help others. So,
Yes, and like I said
mm,
to you the other day, and people watching, you're probably a star seed or a
mm,
light worker if you want to use that term, which I'm sure
mm,
everyone watching my podcast will know what that is.
mhm.
But we're here to, expand and bring an elevated consciousness in whatever way that is. You don't have to change the world overnight, but you being you and doing this, I really believe doing this shadow work is what is going to shift the whole paradigm of the planet. And
Yeah,
even though I'm not into what's going on, I can feel it, the chaos. It's actually, if you feel like you're in a really dark space right now, know that actually you doing the shadow work is gonna make a big difference to the planet as well.
yeah. There's always a light within us.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Matt. It's been fun and really appreciate your time and energy. And yeah, it's been good.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye for now. Oh, there we go.